laugh when people ask me my height because I'm one of the few guys who actually can be honest with my height. And in fact, you sometimes need to say that perhaps you're a little bit shorter just to disarm people. I'm like, yeah, I'm like 6'3", 6'4". It's like, I'm 6'5".
It's funny how people have no concept of anything above 6'2".
Yeah.
Like, even what 6 foot looks like. But anything above 6'2", it's like, oh, are you 6'4"? It's like, nah. No.
I'm right on the edge of what people recognise. It's mad.
How tall are you?
6'8.5".
Yeah, I'm 6'5". But I do laugh because people are like, nah, you look more like 6'8". I'm like, I promise you, I'm not. And I'm like, if you saw me stand next to somebody that was 6'8", you would understand that there's a huge difference.
Just like when you're around basketball guys, 6'10's like mad.
Yeah.
So should we start with, as in regarding the camera, who's going to do the intro?
This one
I'm
here.
with you then.
Cool. So obviously, this is yours.
Yeah.
You want to talk to the audience up there. I'll try to get up and...
Yeah, no worries. I'm not going to talk into the camera. I might actually at some point. I don't think we've done that yet, have we?
I've done it a couple of times.
You've looked for the mic.
Or straight down camera.
Shock, yeah,
Oof.
down the barrel of it. This guy's doing,
got it
intense.
he's doing audition tapes over here.
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes.
Already you are.
Welcome to another Black in a Box, the podcast about black spaces.
That's not it.
Try again.
That-
Try again. 1 in 2. 1 in 2 you get right. 1 in 2 you get right. No, don't.
But now
Leave it in.
Now the pressure.
Dom, leave it in. Leave it in.
Welcome to another Black in a Box, the podcast about black faces in white spaces. Ooh.
Smashed it.
Feeling the heat. How are we, Joel? You good?
No.
Don't make him laugh too much.
guy's his
I
man.
can hear it on his chest.
I've not been very well. Take me out to the
Yeah.
glue factory. Like,
This
I'm
is
done. I'm done out here. Give me my free bus pass and my Domino's. I'm finished.
Are we good on the other side?
Yeah, man. All good.
Good.
I've had my shots today. Kenya next week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, big time. Big time Kenya and Zanzibar. So I'm ready. Good to go.
Returning.
Trips.
Yeah.
Big visits.
The big visits are coming up, man.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to get my toes out. It's going to be wicked.
Good grief. He's touching the homeland.
It's about time.
Respect
4
it.
years since I was last out there, so all good.
Yeah. That moment of silence was for Ali. She's not here.
Yeah.
But what we do have is a guest, beloved by algorithms. A rare cross-Atlantic, transatlantic multi-athlete star. Eh?
You sounded very Yorkshire there.
Yeah.
Getting back.
Pro rugby, the NFL, and now the Bar Council. A former Worcester Warrior, Pittsburgh Steeler, Harlequin, and I can say personally, one time Ushuaia two-stepper.
That's the real him.
From the bench to the pitch to the bar. It's Christian Scotland-Williamson.
Woo! What an intro. Thank you for having me. This is going to be a special one for sure.
I was up crafting those bars still.
That's the best intro I've heard yet, you know?
Yeah, you crafted those bars, but couldn't remember the world is told by black faces and white faces.
That's where the energy was going.
You just dancing against the punchline.
Yeah. I was like, right, where are my clips at? Yeah. I mean, you've gone the whole way around the world to come about 7 miles from where you were born?
Yeah, not far. Born in South Woodford, Whips Cross Hospital, July '93. You know, but went to school in High Wycombe, so it was a very different experience. Kind of going from there. Then at 11, I made the decision to go to boarding school. Didn't really like any of the schools around me.
Were you RGS?
RGS High Wycombe.
Elliot O'Brien. You used to live with him.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's a year older than you.
Yeah, yeah.
Said
above.
you're a good boy. Said
Yeah.
you're a good lad.
Come on, good reputation. That's what you have to say, at least.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's been good, and then obviously having the opportunity to play overseas, play in America, and play America's sport, it was absolutely insane. Coming from humble beginnings in Woodford, and knocking around in Leytonstone, playing basketball with my brother and stuff like that. So it's been a journey.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about. This is it, and I think when there was a possibility of this happening, because basically having like us creating this platform, it's just like, okay, who are potential sort of guests? And your story was always like I thought if we get a chance to talk about that, it's going to be a good one. And to be honest, it's good we've done it now, because since then you've added about 3 chapters. So,
it's been busy.
You know,
It's definitely been busy.
Exactly. I don't know. Well, I'm sure we can say this now. You got engaged recently?
Yeah.
Congrats, bro.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Go on.
Yeah, bent the knee in California 2 weeks ago, actually. Yeah.
Wow. It's fresh.
Sensational.
Yeah, real fresh.
Amazing.
Sensational. Good stuff, man. I didn't have that down, but that was passed on to me by a mutual. I was like, yeah, I need to get that in.
Oh, you've been on socials. You've been stalking. I like it.
No, this was face to face, bro. This was little birds.
Yeah.
I'm out here.
Ear to the ground.
Exactly. That's that's through our NFL Academy people.
Oh, wow. So you've got a proper connection.
Yeah, bro, it's out there. Yeah. I actually, originally J Bell was like, can I come on? I was like, no, Christian's coming on.
Oh, wow. That means something, especially homegrown. Come on,
Yeah. I'm lying. Just trying to gas you. So, yeah, I mean, as I say, a lot to talk about. Let's start at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Rugby, unintentional.
Completely. I was playing in goal. I was playing defence, and I grew too much and put on too much weight, so they put me in goal. And my team was quite good, so the ball was always at the other end. So then I just sat down in goal. My coach was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just standing here in the rain. I might as well sit down. It's not going to come to me." So then I kind of got kicked off the team. This is in primary school of a class of 20 kids. So obviously you're going to be short on 11 if you're kicking one of the players off. And then basically I couldn't rejoin the team unless I apologised. But I said, what am I apologising for? I got bored. Like, you're not using me how I want to be used. And then especially with like my older brother's 4 years older than me. My dad was a boxer. My brother was playing football at the time, athletic family, and I was just bored. So I was like, well, I'm not apologising for something that I'm not really remorseful for.
Yeah.
And then I never rejoined the team. And then one of my dad's friends.
One of them difficult blacks.
Didn't know his place.
Yeah. One of my dad's friends said, go down to your local rugby club. Next thing I was scoring 5 tries a game. I was like, okay, this is fun.
What club was that?
Eton Manor in Wanstead.
Shout out Eton Manor.
Yeah, shout out Eton Manor, the originals.
And from there, how do you end up joining Worcester?
Well, this is a good one. So I was never in an academy. I've never played county rugby, never played Southwest. I've never had so much of a conversation with an academy manager until my final year at Loughborough. So I was just turned 20. I actually didn't play at all in my second year. Grew out of love with the game. I think there was a conflict when I went from playing schoolboy rugby with my mates that I'd played with from year 7, who are still my best mates now, to then knew that the professional dream wasn't really a reality. I was going to uni for academics rather than for sport. Ended up going to Loughborough, which obviously a good sporting university. But I'd always played for fun because professional was never a dream. So then I got to university. Then university rugby teams, what it's like. Played my first year. I was in the fresher team, Bucks 2, which is Loughborough's 3rd team. Yeah, I've always been in the A team and stuff like this. And the culture of the club at the time, in terms of what the senior players were like, didn't really agree with me. So in my second year, decided I didn't want to play. I wanted to just have fun for myself, enjoy university. And then it was only before my final year where I realised if I don't play now, I'm never going to play again, because I was applying for grad schemes in finance actually at the time. And I wasn't going to be a weekend warrior that's getting black eyes at the weekend, turning up at his desk on Monday. That just wasn't how I was set up to play. So then the coach, because I hadn't played in that second year, said, go away, do a pre-season somewhere else. I went to Barking Rugby Club, did a month with them.
Was this when you were at Loughborough?
This is when I was at Loughborough, in the off-season.
Alan Buzzer, was it still?
Huh?
Wasn't still Alan Buzzer then?
No, it was Dave Morris at the time. Said, go to your local rugby club. So I went to Barking, which is like a decent-ish standard. And then did a month with them, came up for Loughborough Performance Squad training. And then by the October, Worcester needed a stand-in for an A-League game. I was actually on my way to York to fit gym platforms with ESP. It's like a part-time job that I used to do. Got the phone call, drove back down, picked up my boots and my gum shield, drove to Worcester with one of my mates, played. Head coach came up to me afterwards, said, I really like your game, come back next week. Came back the following week, and then I think 3 weeks after that, I signed my first professional contract in the change room before my debut, and I scored.
It's insane. Like, there's so many things you said about people that play university sport, and this isn't unique to rugby. Just how much of it is the right person making that call for you, unless you can put yourself in a position that you can speak for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously what it was for you then. It's like, it was undeniable, obviously, at that point, but without being in any of those systems, you went passed on and then passed on and then passed on.
Can I just say there as well, right? You've really made me feel like I really ain't shit, because I've got to be honest, there was parallels up until the end of second year, because I did the same thing. First year, I went up to uni, was playing basketball, my sport, was in the third team. I was like, right, okay, got into the second team. Second year starts, I'm gonna go for it. Got injured during pre-season, was like, I'm gonna enjoy my second year. I'm going to chill, enjoy, and I never came back from that. Not once came back from that. So that's the right way to do it, yeah.
What was it about the culture in that first year that didn't agree with you?
My parents always taught me to be an island, and I think what was expected in terms of conforming to club culture and the socials never really sat well with me. And so rather than get involved in any back and forth where, because I'm a fresher or first year, I've always treated everyone how I want to be treated. And outside of that institution, just because you've been there 2 more years than me doesn't mean you can talk to me any kind of way. So that was a real problem for me. And I guess it was an adjustment where first year, well, I'd lived away from home since I was 11, so that wasn't a problem. But first year at university, kind of finding your feet and things like that. And I realized that what rugby had always meant to me, which was playing for fun with your mates, I was suddenly bouncing between 2 or 3 different teams, whether it's like Bucks 1, 2, or the fresher team. And I realized that the mates I have are going to be there anyway, regardless of if I play. So the sacrifice in terms of compromising who I wanted to be in that space wasn't really worth it for that second year. Then I came back in my third year because you're top of the tree, so no one's really going to tell you anything. And so it wasn't as much of an issue of, even though I'm bigger than anyone who talked to me, someone talking down to me just because they're a third year and I'm a first year. So that definitely played a part of it. Yeah,
I remember the first time somebody tried to say, shut the F up fresher to me. And I literally just looked at him and went, this is not going to go how you think.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, I'm just, like, I've gone from, I was playing for Canterbury when I was like 18, like, they had a really good system where, as a junior, it didn't matter if you were like the God's greatest gift, you're going to play the fourth team. The fourth team was the first team from 10 years ago. If you do really well with that, they'll put you into the first team squad, which comprises the first and the second team. The third team is exiles. That's the uni students who just want to turn up and play on a Saturday. So I've gone from playing with guys who are weirdly like my sort of age now, to then playing with the first team squad and then being told to like, shut the F up fresher. I'm like, but these guys wouldn't even have said that to me.
Exactly.
So, and then I also made the decision not to drink in my first year at university. Like, I'd had a year out. I got to university and I saw some very young looking people drinking way too much. I was like, I'm just not interested in that. So I'm really interested, because obviously I would have thought that Loughborough's got this kind of reputation as the sporting university. So to hear that they still have those same, like, it's always like the guy that was like a second team captain at school, and like his whole goal in life now is to be the social secretary of the rugby team at university. They're the worst people, because it's like I
keep being triggered, man. I was social secretary.
It's like he's shooting at me.
That was you.
That was me. That was me. There's all kinds of indirect stuff.
But yeah, no, I like that. So you just moved away, but you must have still been working out, because it's very difficult to go from kind of not playing any rugby to 3 weeks later. By the way, Worcester need a guy.
I'll be honest. I was always, because I've grown up in a training family, so I've always trained. And I like to say I'm sport agnostic. But if I had a collision sport that was different to rugby on my doorstep, like American football, I would have played that. My brother played basketball, so I played basketball with him when I was younger as well. But I kept training in that year out. I was in great shape, and just being around that training ecosystem that is Loughborough, like I learned so much when I was there, but just from tagging along with a few of my mates who'd been in academies when I wasn't, and just seeing how they trained, and then just training's always been a good way for me to blow off steam. So I always say, like, I can't be angry if I'm tired. I don't like being angry, so I expel that energy in my training. And so in that second year, while I wasn't playing rugby, I was still going to gym regularly, even putting myself through tour-a-days for no reason sometimes, just to get in good shape. And just having that outlet and being around that environment. And then I only got my shot because I was 4th choice going into that final year. So A-League plays on a Monday, and Loughborough have a National 1 side at that time that played on a Saturday. So I play intermittently for them, but not really. The promise of elusive game time that never materializes. And then I was 4th choice, so they needed the other 3 locks for the Saturday game. So then I was the next one who wasn't needed. So then that's the only reason why I went. And if I didn't pick up that phone call, then none of the rest of my journey happened. So it's a real sliding doors moment where you are really one decision away from a completely different life. Like, I picked up the phone, and at that time, playing A-League, when I'd never played county, never had any England rep honours, when I used to go to the camps and be like, well, I can play like that. There's nothing different between me and that person. It's just opportunity and being at a bigger private school where I was at a state boarding school. And so having that opportunity to actually get that platform, to get in front of someone who I was very fortunate in, Dean Ryan, who saw me, as he said, ripping up trees on the pitch, where I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know any of the calls or the plays, but I was physically dominant in the game, and that's something that you can't really teach. And then you can mold that into something. So where all of my peers who are playing at that stage have been playing in a structured setup from 14 years old, and I'm playing 6 years of catch up at that stage, and I'm physically dominant, but I'm missing a few of the technical aspects potentially, but I've still got a good awareness of the game, good dexterity, and great physicality that you can't replicate. That's what got me my shot. And what I find hilarious is the fact that I had 1 start for the National 1 team while I was the first player in the club signed to a professional contract.
Honestly, like, it's funny. Like, and I know later on you did the interview with the Guardian where you were saying you were just answering the phone on the off chance someone was calling, and it sounds like that's been really present throughout your life, the different opportunities. I mean, you always say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You presumably you started saying that after second year and not when you needed to.
Learn the hard way.
Let's drop that one.
You always say that, but when I was at Northumbria, they'd come down, the Falcons would come down and pick out lads from the team to play for like the A-League, and I mean, those lads were getting subbed off after 12 minutes and they never played again. So you were obviously good enough. So it's like the opportunity was there, you were ready for the moment, and you took the moment. So just on your schooling, like you mentioned that you went to RGS and then you decided to go elsewhere, or you
No, I stayed at RGS from year 7 till uni.
Okay,
full secondary school.
What was the choice? Why did you make that choice
to go?
Yeah,
it's funny. My mum didn't want me to go, but I saw. So my brother was getting chased home from school. A lot of racism in the school, a lot of bullying. That was, now when you look back at it, horrendous. That could really change how you view life, I think. And I knew at an early age, I think I've always been blessed with like a vision for what I wanted in my life. And I knew that it wasn't that. And as well as playing rugby, none of the schools around me really played rugby. And at that time I was, I think it was just after England won the World Cup as well, getting into it, really enjoying it, enjoying my club rugby. Good school, had to pass 11 plus to get in, and would give me avenues that were different. I've always been someone who wanted to have something for myself that not everyone else had. So everyone in my primary school was filtering out to the local areas, local schools. And to be honest, I just didn't want to go to school with any of them either. And this gave me a chance to have good education and play rugby, as well as it allowed me to not have to worry about all the extracurricular activities I want to do and then bothering my parents for picking me up. And I saw the sacrifices my parents were making in that regard. So I said to my parents, if I pass the exam, can you find the money for me to go? Yeah. And so I passed the exam, and then it was down to them to do the rest of it. And luckily I was fortunate enough that they were able to do that for me and sacrifice for me. And I think that's what's underpinned everything, even with the playing side, where my parents sacrificed me to have an education. Anything I did with my body was up to me and my choice. My dad was a boxer, brother played basketball, rugby was my thing, and American football. So it's not like I had someone to follow in any of those areas that I've chosen to pursue with my athletic career. But in terms of the education piece, both my parents from the Caribbean, born here. My mum's youngest of 12, and only her and one of my uncles were born in England, the rest across the Caribbean, so Dominican, Antiguan, and then my dad's Guyanese. So all of them came to this country. What is it? You beat book. It's all about education. It's all about a man with knowledge unfit to be a slave. Yeah. So I've had moments where my dad's 6'6", so my dad always instilled in us, you're going to be big black men, and you'll be treated a certain way, especially because he was a police officer. He saw things that were happening to young black men and young black kids. He was a boxer that used to get stopped by the police for doing road runs because running wasn't that common. So it's like, why are you in a tracksuit? Why are you running? And he's actually training to fight for the police force in the police firearms Olympics and things like that. So the realities of racism were always impressed upon us in terms of how to navigate as big men, as well as having the hue and the pigmentation that we have, and what that would mean in terms of how we're treated, in terms of the benefit of the doubt that you wouldn't have. Like I remember, I think even at my secondary school, I was 11 or 12, standing behind a teacher in the lunch queue, and I was told that I was being intimidating because I was standing so close. I was like, "What do you want me to queue?" Do you know what I mean? And things like that. Just because of my size, I was never treated. Even though I was July born, I was never given the benefit of the doubt of my, let's say, actual age. I won't say mental age because I think I was quite advanced, but my physical stature was in advance of my years, and that always played into whether or not I was given the benefit of the doubt when it came to 50-50 decisions, and more often than not, it wasn't the case.
That manifests on the pitch as well, in terms of kind of, don't talk to me, because I've seen it. Like I coached, and one of my bugbears I always say to Dan is, I've never seen a black fly half.
You get moved out.
But the thing is like you're 6'8", but your dad was, good enough to be an ABA champion, so you obviously going to have elite hand-eye coordination, all of that. But I'm interested in how you were viewed on the pitch. Were you immediately thrown into the second row, or did somebody go, hold on, if your dad's got this hand-eye coordination, maybe you can be a mutant fly half, maybe you can be a centre, maybe you can be a fullback, or was it just good engine on him, let's get him in the forward? So I guess there's that part of my question. Then also, what were your interactions like on the pitch? And also, did you experience any kind of racism on the pitch? I'm interested in all of those.
So I actually started off as prop. I was a tight head prop. Yeah. Tight head prop.
Have you always been like this tall for your age? Were you like the 6'8" of like 9-year-olds?
From when I was 5 to 14, I was same age, shoe size, weight in stone.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I was the same.
So every year it was bigger. And not many people grow at that kind of rate. And then as soon as I hit 14, stretched out a bit more, and then it was only when I got to uni I kind of filled out more. But I've always just been bigger. You can see in photos, I've always been like, it looks like
so
looks
your
like
coach
I've been held
was
back.
Like, prop.
Yeah. But the thing is, I used to, especially when it's only either 3-person scrums when you're doing minis or 5-person scrum, I'd move the whole scrum on my own. You know what I mean? Like the whole one side's getting caved in while I'm wearing my shin pads with my corner. But then in terms of the racism aspect, not really, to be honest. I think that rugby was always quite a safe space for me. The football team that my brother and I played for, the football club, I would say that there were things that I wanted to get away from there. Similar to, I guess, wanting to go to boarding school as well. I've always known where I felt comfortable and trusted my gut with decisions like that. But then in terms of what you're saying about opportunity to play certain positions, 100%. I remember going to school with one really talented player who was moved to fullback from fly half just because he was quick but had great hands and was great distributor of the ball. But then constantly, I guess I didn't really fully realise, but it's black wingers can't catch. It's like if he catches the ball, he's going to run out around everyone. That was always the trope. When I got off the bus, it was like, oh, it's that guy. Because I think in year 7, I ran over someone and needed a neck brace. I think the parent was like, there's no way that kid's that age. But then because you play against the Millfields, the Wellingtons, the top private school circuit, so you play them every year as you grow up, so you kind of know the similar faces. And so I guess it's that kind of off-brand banter that you kind of accept when you're in that environment, because it was just quite standard. But then now looking back, it's wrong that players with the ability weren't given the opportunity at those young ages to really showcase their talent in those positions, because their trajectory could be completely different.
And obviously, we have this conversation in the sort of shadow of the RFU survey on like race and diversity, specifically within the elite game, that kind of said that elite black players have experienced racism. And obviously Luther Burrell's story kind of came out, and he's had this really interesting career, and the way that it sort of ended with kind of Eddie Jones. When you were listening, I'm assuming that, well, I know you've heard Luther's story because I saw you were kind of quoted in the Times report. Was the stuff that he was saying, did it resonate with your experience of being kind of in those elite settings?
Oh, completely. I even came out quite vocally in support of him, because a lot of people would say that, oh, maybe that's just a one-off case. And I even said in my article, I didn't experience any direct racism in terms of my racial characteristics, but I saw other people being discriminated against. And that was by the performance director. And so if that's the person who's signing the contract, who's making that happen, then what chance has everyone else got? And I even know part of the reason why I decided to leave and go to the NFL was from lack of opportunity, and that lack of opportunity was not born out of on-field performance whatsoever. It was constantly moving goalposts, things that were effectively, I think, when I had the last straw, I went into the head coach of the DOR's office, and because I've been going in consistently, what do I have to do to play? I'm making team of the week from the bench, basically, highlight reel plays, going viral, all this stuff, and I've just got no value in terms of this building. So I've learned how to call lineouts. We can't really trust you to call lineouts.
Sorry.
Show me the numbers to prove it, because the man used to go down the list with a ruler for your stats, and that was the original metric, which is this how you play. Okay, in 20 minutes, I have this many dominant carries, this many dominant tackles. Oh no, it's now this. Okay, then the final straw was, well, he's playing well and we like him, so you're gonna have to just sit on the bench.
Involvement. the reason I laugh when you said lineouts is because I was coaching a university in 2019, and we had this black back rower who all he did was baptize people in tackles and carry like somebody had insulted his family. And we did not have a lot of go forward. And every week when it had come to selection, I'd be like, why is this guy not playing? You're asking me to coach. I don't have any say in selection because universities are weird spaces. Why is he not playing? So I was like, I need to work out a way to get them to admit what they're not going to admit. So I said, right, why don't we say, they had their big game coming up. I said, why don't we say that we're putting it all on this training. If you're not ready to tear up trees in this training session, you're not ready to play. This kid kills everybody. He literally ran over the guy who had his shirt in front of him. So I was like, well, he's got to play, right? And then again, I don't need to get all inside baseball, but he was a back rower, and they went, but I'm not sure, he can't call the line out. I just like, in what world does a back rower have to call? It would be like asking, it'd be like, well, Wayne Rooney's not really a good shot stopper. Is that his job? Yeah. And so I was laughing, and I was also laughing because I played semi-professionally, and that thing that you said about moving goalposts, it was something that I experienced throughout my career. I remember saying, what do I need to do? And it would always be some like that, and I laugh because they'd be like, well, involvements. And I'd be like, but what do you mean when you say involvements? Let's get to the bottom of it. And I thought that my experience was unique. I was playing rugby in Yorkshire. It's national too. I'm looking around. There's not lots of players that look like me. And it's only when I started talking to other people and going, oh, no, I'm not really quick, but I'm a winger. I'm not really particularly powerful, but I'm 6'2", so I've played second row my whole career. And I'm like, why is that happening? You know, Eddie Jones got caught a lot of flack when he said the problem with English rugby is that it's too dominated by a small group of thinkers who are at independent schools.
100%. And it self-selects.
Yeah, but you went to an independent school, so I'm interested that kind of you're saying that was some of the best, happiest rugby that you played.
Yeah, definitely. So we played on the. It was interesting. So it was a grammar school. So I paid because I live far away, so I had to pay for the boarding aspect. But the tuition, everything was free. So everyone I went to school with, it was just like going to grammar school down the road.
Right, okay.
But we played on that private school circuit against all the top teams. So then you're going, the school's looking like Hogwarts, and you're thinking like, oh, you've got underground heating on your first team pitch. What's this?
Yeah.
And so it exposed you to the realities of. I've only ever been one of maybe 3 black players on a team at any given point, and then you take that into the professional game, where a lot of the academies are founded and select from these private schools. So then they're looking for things that like almost like people like us, effectively, and then you get an anomaly that gets thrown in there. Who in the professional. When I was professional, I didn't go to any team socials that weren't like, say, like bowling and stuff like that. Or if I did, I'd drive. And I made a decision when I finished at Loughborough, I just stopped drinking, went teetotal for my career, just because I wanted to give myself the best chance. I knew I was already on the back foot and maximize my opportunity. But also part of that as well was if I just say I categorically do not drink, or I'd have a couple of drinks in the off season, then I'm not going to get peer pressured into having one that then goes to 2 to 3 to 4. And especially in that professional environment, it's a job. Do you know what I mean? It's ultimately a job. I have a small window of time to make the most of it. And so in terms of that independent school thinking, when the coaches are selecting from what grassroots to them is like the bottom of the academy tree, it's like 14, and they're involved with these private schools and they behave a certain way, they speak a certain way. Even if you listen to some players' interviews, you can just cut and paste them. They're all exactly the same. It's like credit to the lads, credit to the opposition, make this place a fortress. Like it's all the same because it's groupthink. It's all. There's no diversity of thought, and I feel like that's a problem where then you get 2 or 3 black players that sit together at lunch. It's like, why are they all sitting together? When in reality, you're not. You're the minority in the space. And so you only sat together like every once in a while anyway, because you get on with everyone because it's a team-based setting. But then when that filters into selection and opportunities on the pitch based on perceptions of how you integrate with the team, when you get on with absolutely everyone, but just because you don't fully immerse yourself in what they might consider as being a true club man, suddenly you're a maverick. Suddenly you're, for want of a better word, the black sheep. Suddenly you're someone who can get all of their clips in a defensive meeting be a highlight reel basically of this is how you meant to do it, but then can't make the team. Then how does that work? And then those goalposts moving, and then I think the opportunity came for me where I made that big tackle in a Sunday game against Wasps, and I've been making tackles like that my whole career, but it just so happened that it was right place, right time, right moment. Got in front of some NFL scouts who then called my phone. I thought it was a prank call, but similar to the first opportunity to have, it's nothing I hadn't done before where I answered the phone and it changed my life. So I was like, let's pull this thread, let's see where it leads to. And at that time, I was going to move clubs, and I gave the club I was at another opportunity effectively. I went in and I said, what do I have to do to play? And I was met with an answer that I didn't want to continue the season, to be honest. I would have been in an interesting situation mentally to be able to continue the season under those circumstances and still give my best, where I'd had a significant injury and I broke my back first year of my career, so I was out for 2 years. And that's when I went back to school and got my master's. But come back from that, the mental challenge of coming back from that, as well as while that was going on, being subjected to different treatment to what other players were. And my life made more difficult. And I only had 4 weeks off in 4 years that I was a rugby player as well. So just constant grind and just being on it, as well as studying, to then I can't even play. You're basically telling me that no matter what I do, I'm not going to start. And my financial earning power as well, business side does come into it as well. If you're not starting and I've only got 1 Premiership start to my name, but a lot of people are fascinated by this stat. I've got 1 Premiership start to my name, and if you don't have a certain number of starts, opportunities, highlight reel plays, then your market value gets suppressed. So then I've gone into them saying, what do I have to do to play? Goalposts kept moving, so I said, I'm leaving. I just said, I've had enough, and I want to seek opportunity over security and go to what I valued as more of a meritocracy in the NFL, where it's day-to-day appraisal of what is your contribution to us winning?
Yeah.
Do you help this team win or not? And that's what matters, not the rest of the nonsense that were constantly dragging me from pillar to post about what I had to do to play.
There's like people that get those post academy, like first rugby union contracts are mad. Like there's guys at uni on like $6,000.
Yep.
And I'm like,
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No money.
and because you got trained so much, it's like I can't even get a proper job. So it's like it's there. People are out there like struggling. Record scratch, freeze frame.
Get the world's attention.
He needs some milk.
Alex Reader is laid out.
Poor guy.
He's just down, but your world is about to change. Being inside that moment, like how quickly did it all sort of snowball into you landing yourself in IMG Academy? Shout out the employers in Florida.
So we're talking, the tackle must have been in October. Phone rang like 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later. And then the London games were on. Went down to watch Vikings Browns. Score was 33-16, imprinted in my head.
Yeah. Got
Given the full like recruitment, like you're like Simba, this can all be yours. Fireworks, pitch side. Being pitch side really made it tangible for me. I went with my brother because I saw I matched up physically. It's different when you watch it on TV. The pads, the helmets. Don't get me wrong, everyone's massive, but like for me, seeing it in reality, I thought, no, like, I'm matching up, I'm stacking up, I'm betting myself. I know I can do this. I know that I have the intellect to figure out the game, and I'd been a fan of football anyway. And the strange, almost serendipitous thing about it all was when I was coming back from my back injury, because I was out for like 726 days between games, like a long time. I used to just watch America's Game, Football Life, all of these training documentaries about American football, so I could see people like me training in a physically demanding sport, and I could draw inspiration from that. Because apart from growing up, Jason Robertson, Paul Sackey, do you know what I mean? Like it's slim. It's slim in terms of who am I looking at that I can relate to that's doing what I want to do at that level. So then I already knew a lot about the game. I was already a Steelers fan anyway, which is why it's very strange I ended up playing for the Steelers. I used to watch Troy Polamalu's hype videos before I used to go play when I was younger and stuff like this. And so then knowing what the game was like, then going and seeing physically, oh, this is how big these guys are. I match up physically. My brother had played college basketball in America for UAB, and every time I went out there, I was getting scholarship offers. Like, you gotta come play, because I was huge. And like, you walk in the door, and this just goes to show the talent identification process is so flawed in rugby, because how are you gonna have a 6'7", 14, 15-year-old who's playing first team rugby on the circuit that you're selecting everyone from, is mauling people, ripping up trees, and you're not even gonna have a conversation with them?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm flying out to see my brother. I'm getting scholarship offers on the spot, but I didn't want to go because of that educational piece, because I wanted to finish my studies here. And college wasn't something that I really wanted to go to. I knew I'd be in like a safe space in London, or in England, sorry, going to Loughborough. And it's so difficult to make it out of those college ranks, whether it's basketball or American football, to make it to the pros, that I wanted to value my education to at least I've got the piece of paper. And then when the time did come later on, I had something to fall back on that gave me the security to be fearless in my pursuit of playing American football, because I knew I can just go all in on this and kind of burn the ships behind me, because I'm not going to be destitute. So a lot of people when I was playing were saying like, oh, you can't focus on both, it's not possible. But actually my studies are what gave me the security to play even more fearlessly. Because I knew, okay, say this does, I had a broken back, I've had nerve damage in my shoulder in my rugby career, a few other injuries, but because I knew I had something to fall back on, I was willing to go back into the fight.
Yeah.
Whereas otherwise I'd be a bit more kind of scared about like, oh, if I get another injury, could this all be over? Then what do I do? Whereas the flip side of that was, okay, if I do get another injury, then I know what my plan is for the next thing.
And so after sort of moving out to, you went to IMG and then you went to Pittsburgh. What was it like? Sort of, obviously you were coming from a professional training environment, and then you went to IMG Florida, where it's, I imagine it's a bit of a hothouse. You then went in to the NFL environment. Were you treated, what were you treated like? Were you treated like just, someone who was passing through? Like, obviously they have the practice squad guys. Like, what did everyone else think of you? Like, what was that whole environment like?
So IMG, so I got out my contract in the December, had Christmas at home, then flew to IMG, I think on the 14th of January, 2018 for like a crash course, 3-month camp, training 6 days a week, up at 6 a.m, last meeting finishing at 11 p.m. And that was 6 days a week, 1 day off. And you're just going, because you got to do X's and O's, football 101. I've kept my notebooks and stuff, and some of it was step with inside foot, gain ground. Like, that's the level of basic. And I'm about to go and try and fight for a job in the NFL off this. You know what I mean? I'm trying to learn which foot to step with. So it's a steep learning curve. But did as much as we could in that IMG phase. And the guys that I train with, we're like bonded for life, because there's not many people who are trying to defy the odds, which are so heavily stacked against anyone who's born in that country, let alone an international player.
One of you on a Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. But then also speaking to that though, is that now the international game is growing, and this was still at the origin points of that, where it was still not proven out. Guys like FA, guys like Jordan Mailata hadn't really made it, and so it was still the unknown. Whereas now with like the international pathway program, like, it's kind of like the sacrificial lambs that came early, which is like you've got to prove out the process that it can happen. And then now mindsets are changed. Whereas you walk into, I remember I walked into the Steelers, walked past the 6 Lombardi trophies, go get suited up for your helmet. And obviously I was like a bit of a Steelers historian already anyway. And real pinch yourself moment, but you've got no time to have a pinch yourself moment, because you fly in at 2 o'clock, medicals, get kitted out for uniform, team meeting 6 o'clock till 7, position meeting 7 till 8, where I met my position coach, who's a 65, 66-year-old guy from Alabama who's been to 4 Super Bowls, won 2, only ever coached top round draft picks. He's never had to go from someone step inside foot, gain ground, and you're about to practice in the NFL. And then he's dropped 80 plays on your desk. And then the good thing was all nights cramming at Loughborough. I was thinking like, okay, I've got to learn these hieroglyphics somehow. And then the next morning at 10 a.m, you're going full speed with guys who are top college prospects, and you just got to figure it out, because you mess up too much, you get pulled, you're not going to get reps, and you're getting 1, maybe 2 reps a period, if that. And so you might have, in terms of actual snaps, 10 for the day.
Wow.
So you got to be behind people watching and being able to learn from that until you earn your keep. And then I think it was Juju said to me once, I made a big play end of my second year, end of my first year or second year. He's like, see, now you've earned your name. Otherwise you're just a number. Because the turnover of players, they should be like, what's going on 4-9? And like, there's no real incentive to invest too emotionally in some people who you don't think are going to be there for a long time. And especially me coming in, big athlete, people couldn't work out how the hell I sounded like I sounded, because a lot of people had never met an African-American English person before. And I said, I'm not African-American. And so you're dealing with those cultural changes, as well as like living in a new country, new city, new job. One of the most highly pressured jobs you could probably have for a historic franchise as a standard of performance and expectation. Then I've gone from playing from 12,000, 13,000, training camp 15,000, watching practice. First game against the Eagles just after their Super Bowl win, probably like 70,000. Second game, Lambeau Field, 85,000. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a quick learning curve, but because I'd had, I guess, a smaller scale experience of that, like 0 to 100, where I've gone from didn't play at all my second year, just training, 4th choice at Loughborough, 2 A-League games, packed out Friday Night Lights, 12,000 people score on debut, and I've just kind of learnt to manage those nerves. But I was able to take it all in and savor it because I knew it was a experience that was priceless.
You just mentioned, just quickly there, you talked about this when you first stepped into the facility. You were going to get suited up and everything. That you don't really have time for these pinch yourself moments. With your career and all of these little points that you're talking about, surely you've got to take time sometimes to just take stock of what you've achieved and the circumstances through which you've done it. When do you do that?
It's tough, you know. Like when I was in America, I remember the Lambeau Field game in particular because I knew how historic that ground was in terms of the history of football. When the anthems were going, fireworks went off, I was like, I took a deep breath and I was like, remember this because like this is one of those moments. And there are a few moments throughout my time in America, I really stamped it in. Like we beat the Patriots at home, and obviously Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady was like a big back and forth AFC throughout history. And we beat the Patriots at home, and I was on the sideline for the game. Joe Hayden seals the game with interception, and I've never experienced an atmosphere like it. And then just the locker room afterwards, it's really hard to describe. But from someone who just watched, who never thought that I could even get to America to see an NFL game, to have a moment like that, there are quite a few moments where you do pinch yourself. But then the competitor in you and in me I was never content with just playing practice squad.
Of course.
I was never content with just being another role player, similarly to why I left rugby. It was always, as most competitors are, I want it all. Like I want to play, I want to win, I want to make a big contribution to the reason why we win. And so part of me has had to take some time because through injury, that's why I got released the day before training camp. I still had another surgery recently for the same issues, nerve damage. So I've had like 6 surgeries for that now. And so the physical toll and situation that I put my body through, which haven't, I guess, come up to proof in the way I would have liked, to give me the opportunity to have the platform to really embrace my true athleticism and embrace those moments. Those were difficult to deal with in terms of like the mental aspect when it did come to an end. And I think that's why I've always studied, just to have a something consistent where I can still feel like I'm winning in some way, where the feeling of like when I got my bar results recently, I passed the bar. It's like,
congratulations, by
absolutely.
That's not easy.
That's amazing.
That's not easy.
Yeah. But that's something I had to learn to manufacture wins when I couldn't physically. And that's something I've always leaned on.
So I read, and if this is wrong, then like, let me know. But I read that they initially wanted you on the lines, and you were like, "No, I want to be a tight end," and they were cool with that. And can you compare that to the experience of just being in rugby and being like, "You're going to play this position"? The fact that you had some agency in that seems like another. Was that like a moment where you were like almost proof of why I should be here because I'm being listened to?
Yeah, also, I knew that if I was going to be successful in what was a Herculean task of even cracking the NFL, I had to enjoy it. And for me, I could have either played defensive end, offensive tackle, or tight end. At the end of my first year with the Steelers, Coach Tomlin sat me down and said, you either got to come up or come down, because I was in between in terms of my weight. So you either got to come up and play with the big boys in the trenches, or you've got to come down and be quicker. So that's why my second year, I don't think there was an ounce of fat on me, really. I think I got down to like 8% body fat, 119 kilograms. And I was so much faster as well, but just because rugby is just continuous movement, whereas I'm a power athlete, and NFL was geared towards me maximizing those skills. So I was 10 times faster than I had ever been in rugby. And I knew that if I had the opportunity to get my hands on the ball, albeit occasionally, I would enjoy the process more. And tight end position rewards being intelligent. So you have to know the second most of the quarterback. You've got to know the run game, blocking, protection, as well as the passing game. So you're a hybrid player. So that's actually helped me with my broadcasting now, where the time I was out there, I had to learn the game inside out from a schematic point of view, rather than just learning, okay, I'll just look inside the box or I'll just deal with the outside bits. I had to learn everything. So it really gave me a holistic view of what football is, to the point where in my last year, I was sitting in offensive line meetings, making sure I knew what they were doing. And then, because I knew all the installs back to front, because I used to have cue cards I go through every single night, because as a foreign player, if you don't know your alignment and assignment, you don't know the play, that's on you. You just haven't put the time in. If you drop a ball, that's a football mistake. I've been playing football for that long, so I said that I refused to have a system error. So it got to the point where my offensive coordinator and position coach didn't ask me questions unless it was to correct someone else who'd been playing their whole life. So I was playing to my strengths. So I knew I could figure it out because it's like, imagine you're at uni and you get tested on the first year syllabus every year.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like you can keep adding layers and depth to what you know. So I knew playing tight end would allow me to draw on my super strength, which was this, as well as maximize the rest of it and get my hands on the ball and score some touchdowns.
I want to ask one inside baseball question. What does it feel like when there's a run play, but the guard kind of pulls and is running directly at you? That must be a fear, but you must be terrified,
Too
right?
deep, man.
No. What does it feel like when there is a guy who's like 28 stone is flying at you and his whole job is to put you in the dirt? What is that? What in that moment there must be fear, right?
Nah, because you're a competitor, aren't you? So the reality is, it's like you see those mountain goats that just butt heads.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to do it. Basically, you got to be willing to just put your face in the fire sometimes, and it's whoever flinches first. It's a game of chicken, and especially when you get to that level where I'd never been thrown around properly before in my life, but because it's so much technique to everything and all the movements, as well as I was giving up probably 20 kilos to some guys at times, which is tough. Like some guys 150, 160 plus kilograms, and they're quick, and the way that they can strike you with violence as well. You don't get body types like that in any other sport, especially in the trenches. So when you got a pulling guard and you see them going, and then you hear the crack of the helmet and the shoulder pads, it's a good job they're wearing helmet and shoulder pads.
That's a lot of words to say. You got lit up. You can Google that. I wanted to. I think it'd be remiss. We are just on time. It would be remiss of us not to talk about you. You were in Pittsburgh. In fact, probably no better place in the NFL to be when sort of George Floyd was murdered. Just with who Mike Tomlin is as a person and what a leader he's like in that locker room and across the league. What was it like being in the country at that time? What was it like amongst the players? And what's your experience as a black man, but a black Brit in the US at the moment?
It was definitely sobering. I think internationally, everyone felt it, and then particularly like the weight of the black community felt it extra strongly. But the place that sport and athletes have in terms of the community in America, I don't know that there's another country that has the same platform or level of importance, where even if you're a college athlete, you walk down the street, you're a big body. What do you play? Who do you play for?
Yeah.
And there's a fan base, and there's a role attached within the community. So when I was with the Steelers, with our rookie development, we'd go to children's hospitals regularly and play with the kids there, and it meant so much. Whereas I'd say, especially in terms of black success and black visibility of black role models, there isn't the same presence within the community in England. We've seen like Marcus Rashford and people like that doing more now, but the history of social justice, whether it's going back to Muhammad Ali and Bill Russell and people like that, there's a platform and a voice attached within the civil rights legacy. And for me to be part of an organization that has the Rooney Rule, for example, which is aimed at trying to increase the diversity of coaching within the NFL, but to have Coach Tomlin steer the ship in that circumstance, and he gave a platform, because obviously it's during COVID, everything's on Zoom meetings, gave a platform for everyone to voice how they felt about what was happening, and then what impact they could have within the community. Because I think within the NFL, obviously there's the legacy of kneeling. That's why I think it ended up translating over here for football. But the visibility aspect of it, but more, I guess I've come back with a renewed sense of purpose behind it, in terms of what I was doing, in terms of living in my own safe space and safe box isn't enough. It's what am I doing to impact the lives of others and make it better. So like now I'm on the RFU judicial panel for the discrimination and inclusivity, where if there are instances of people feeling ostracized within rugby throughout the whole tree, and incidents of racism or sexism or gender discrimination, there's now a panel that has been set up specifically to deal with those issues. And that was something that I actively pursued in terms of when I came back, I couldn't just be successful on my own. It wasn't enough. And I saw that from how he chose to lead us in that situation, because people were deeply affected. One of the coaches, John Mitchell, was the first black player to have a scholarship to Alabama.
Wow.
And he was our assistant head coach at the time. So there was a lot of history and black history within that building between him and Coach Tomlin and then others. And it was something that I hadn't been able to experience, because outside of my family, I'd never been coached by a black person in my life until I got there. And so it left me with a new sense of self, a new sense of acceptance, a new sense of being able to, I guess, exhale and not have to carry the burden of what I didn't realize I was carrying throughout my rugby career, which I think fundamentally also fed into me not playing in my second year, fed into me leaving the sport. So effectively, I left the sport 3 times. Second year at university, when I left Worcester and went to America, and then when I finally left and then stopped playing last summer, all for different reasons. But I guess at the core is acceptance and understanding, which I couldn't say I had within rugby once I'd left school, because I was with my friends, my peers, who are still my best friends to this day. But then as soon as you go into a more competitive landscape, I didn't feel like I was exposed to true competition, because I wasn't given a fair crack at the whip, because I was 4th choice, and the people playing ahead of me, I didn't think should be playing ahead of me.
How many Christian Scotland-Williamsons do you think have been lost to the sport because they're not willing to go through what you went through?
Look at Christian Wade, another RGS High Wycombe alumni who I had a chat with. I was like, you need to get over here, go to the Bills. So I got over to the Bills.
First touchdown.
Exactly. He's got similar. I've got one start in the Premiership, 1 cap for England, 1 cap for Lions. One of the most prolific try scorers in England in English history, lost to a system. And there's been players who haven't scored at the clip that he has. But again, it was instead of what American football does, is what do you do well that's going to help us win? Do that. We'll cover up the rest of it. Whereas rugby is, oh yeah, you do this to a world-class standard, but all this other stuff we can't make up for. So it's almost like it rewards mediocrity and being great at a lot of stuff, but not exceptional and world-class, because you can't tell me that, especially in the era that Christian was playing in when he was at his prime, that there were 4 better wingers than him. You can't. You
can look at the try scoring record. I had a look at them today, and he's still 3rd, and he left at like 27, 28.
Exactly.
And when he came back to rugby, he went to France, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. And then you came back. Why law?
Why law? That's a good question. So my dad's a barrister, a criminal barrister, and it's something with deep personal meaning. I've looked back recently at my yearbook from when I was leaving primary school, and I put categorically, talk about manifestation, future career, barrister. Nothing mentioned rugby, nothing mentioned American football. It was barrister, because both of my parents got their degrees while I was alive, so I saw the struggle in terms of picking my brother and I up for school. My dad was working night shifts with the police force as well, and he had a bottleneck and ceiling put on him by the force, which was basically like, you're not going to go any higher than this. And so my mum encouraged him, instead of doing A-levels, do a law degree, go from that, be a barrister. And it's been interesting to me to have the luxury of fearlessness in terms of my career prospects.
That's a bar, by the way. The luxury of fearlessness is a bar. Let me write that down.
Because I have been raised by strong women and a strong man who's, through his actions, my dad's shown me what's possible, but through the nurturing, caring words and support, my mum's taught me that I can do anything, and I've always believed that. Whereas when my dad, I feel like at times was transitioning to the bar, which has not been a welcoming space for people of other cultures, and it's a traditional, it's very institutionally British, and the access has to be Oxbridge, and the pipeline for Oxford and Cambridge. I had an interview for Oxford, didn't get it. I was the only black kid the whole weekend when I had the interview. And again, the difference between one yes, one no is completely different, because then now I'm finding when I'm applying for certain chambers, they only select from Oxbridge. But if the pipeline on the beginning doesn't let you get in, then it means you can't have a chance of operating at the top end in the bar. So while I was at primary school, I saw my dad studying and doing nights, and he'd say he's falling asleep in class and stuff because he's struggling to keep up. But then now I've done the bar, it's given me an immense and profound respect for him to be able to do that while having 2 kids at home, while being married. And so I guess that must have, by osmosis, filtered into my consciousness, where when I was 10 years old, I wrote in my yearbook I was going to be a barrister, which is why I knew, like, coming full circle now, passing the bar was a huge moment for me, because it's like, well, this is what I wanted to do all along. And it just so happens that what I've experienced in my professional career as a player has given me the reason for why it was the right decision when I was 10, but I didn't really know why I would need those skills.
It made me think of, it does make me think of Uncle Phil, and I think of the parallels, like, in that family, and we talk about this a lot, Fresh Prince, and Uncle Phil was a lawyer, he was a judge, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was a judge. And I think...
What are the other parallels?
Well... He was an athlete. Yeah. Uncle Phil was he was a college football god at Brown.
He was.
Yeah, and that's it. he was bald. Your man bald?
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. That's it. How many more do you need? And it's funny. We were going to delve. Originally, I thought we need to delve more into family, but I feel like your family's kind of ever present in everything you do and the stories you tell. And you've mentioned the crash a few times that you were in with your mum, and they're just sort of in the background, these stories, and you sound quite self-driven, but in a way, are you also, just without admitting it to yourself, like quite driven by the success around you?
I would say it's making the sacrifice worthwhile, seeing the struggle, and I guess fundamentally progress is born from pain. So it's seeing the struggle and injustice and lack of opportunity, despite still being brilliant, that the generation above weren't afforded. So then now that luxury of fearlessness is, I have a platform. Sport's given me a platform to now enter the space that I always wanted to be in at a much higher altitude than I would have if I'd just, say, gone to university and then been banging the door down trying to be a barrister. Whereas now it's much more of a realistic ambition and goal. And I feel like my granddad used to ride a horse around the Caribbean as a police officer in Dominica before he moved over Windrush generation and was a carpenter. And again, going back to what I said before, education, beat book, a man with knowledge is unfit to be a slave. And as a big black man, I've had moments in my playing career where I was talked down to by certain people, where I had certain discussions that have never sat well with me, and I didn't have a voice. And so now as a barrister, where it's predominantly advocacy based, I use my voice, and my study and acquisition of the skill is what's given me safety and empowerment. And so I now understand the value in it more. And especially given the platform I have now, I have the technical knowledge and skill to then hopefully be a mouthpiece for the voiceless and people who were in positions that I've been in personally where I didn't know who to turn to. And even though I could lean on my parents, I had to go through certain experiences on my own to drive me to this point.
That's phenomenal. We'll try and get a bit more in, but I did just want to touch on if anyone's seen the Dele Alli interview, and you said a lot there, sort of progress born from pain, like that guy. It's incredible to me that he is even one, alive, two, was able to get to that point in life that he did, carrying that weight with him. I don't know what you.
I just wish that it wouldn't be such a short-term memory situation whenever something like this happens, because I don't want to draw too many parallels, but Caroline Flack, when that happened, everyone was really, really aware of mental health for about 2 weeks. And then it went back to piling in onto people on social media. And we're going to get the same again with Dele Alli's, other people that are going to have that situation in football. And there's so many people that be in a very similar situation to where Dele is. And it's heartbreaking, but is it going to stick eventually? I don't think it will. The amount of times that I've had these conversations in group chats, and there's people that I think are really, really smart, intelligent people saying such ridiculous things, and I'm like, but you don't know that person. You don't know what is going on. You don't know their story. So how can you have this opinion of them? What was it? I saw something recently where I think it was a basketball player that was talking about, if you have a problem with me, call me. If you don't have my number, then have you got a problem with me? Like that's the way a lot of these things should be. People have an opinion on things that they don't know anything about.
So it's interesting when you said Caroline Flack. I thought of Caroline Flack, but for a slightly different reason. He states in the interview that he's probably not ready to have the interview, but there was basically tabloid pressure.
Exactly,
and that's where my mind
immediately
went to. That they're going to, the inference is that they're going to out him, and again, it's that idea of once certain people become public property almost, and that's before we kind of get into whether we're going to kind of stop about the piling on. I think there has to be this fundamental change of you made a great tackle, you can catch a football. It doesn't mean that I get to be like, hey, yo, come take this picture with me. I'm having dinner, and I think that's where perhaps a discussion needs to be had. Why do we feel this sense that people who are in the public eye owe us anything other than their performance on the pitch for Dele Alli, or behind the camera for actors, or whatever it is?
And it's the thing for me is, as a young man, where he didn't really have anywhere else to go, he didn't have anyone to talk to, and we've heard you talk about sort of your experience with different coaches and different systems, and you're fortunate to be sort of an individual who had a sort of family support network around you and other things. And there are countless young men and women out there who don't have that. And that must be a really sort of isolating situation when suddenly you're out in the cold and there is no plan B, and you can't afford to be fearless because there's nothing else there, and your entire life and career is in someone else's hand. And that's even without the potential that you're carrying around that baggage with you from other things going on.
And that is a huge difference. Like, listening to your story, I get emotional, because I'm like, you've had the experience I wish so many people have, and particularly so many men of color, where you've had a family network that have been there. You talk about the luxury of fearlessness, and I guess underneath that there's a sense, if I mess up, it's not that they're going to kind of tell me it's all right, but they will be there. And that is so powerful, and so many men, and particularly, I don't want to say particularly black men, but black men, from my experience, don't have that you have to search to find your father figures. And oftentimes your father figures don't even realize they're your father figures. My headmaster at my primary school was a father figure because he kept me in the school when a kid was racist towards me. Some of my old coaches, the same thing, but they were imperfect, and they didn't just love me unconditionally. So yeah, I think that doing all the things that you've done is a real testament to you first and foremost, and the value of kind of a unit that is there, and I massive respect.
No, it's definitely priceless. I look at the situation, particularly when I left America. I couldn't walk. I went from 120 kilos lean to 143 kilos fat and messy, mentally in a real dungeon, like proper dungeon that had to. I've got strong faith that's been inherited from my parents as well, so I had to turn to the scripture to really dig myself out of, because it was so bad that you have to turn to God, because He's the one that will make sense of it all. And having the the reality of like, I moved back home. I hadn't lived at home since I was 11, and it was quite a cathartic experience of I'd spent from 11 till 28 away, just trying to work for myself for a better life and all that stuff. And then I found myself having had the highs of the highs in the NFL, those moments that would last a lifetime, to then hitting rock bottom. And then I started my law degree when I came back to try and dig myself out of that hole again. But the constant throughout that was both my parents. And so I almost lost my dad to COVID. He was on a ventilator for, I think, 9 days in hospital while I was in America, and like dealing with my own health issues. And even the experience of COVID within the minority community is unequal.
Yeah.
And so the realities behind that, where someone who I've cherished was potentially going to be gone, where I was in America, might not see them again, which so many families did face that reality. I was lucky that he was able to battle through, but still dealing with issues from that. But the one constant is love, it's support, it's that unconditional side. And that's something that I'm extremely grateful, because having grown up with a 2-parent household, that is a luxury, and luxury of fearlessness. That's what built into that luxury of fearlessness, because I had my mum, who was the rock, who built 3 men into giants of men. And then my dad, who modeled the behavior, who, when he wasn't there for good reasons. He was working. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people have one person who has to play both roles, which is incredibly challenging. And that's why success means different things. You can't judge everyone by the same beginning point. And that's something that I definitely don't take for granted. I think that's what's propelled me to do so much, is having both of them support me unconditionally. And then beyond that as well, it's like, if I could be a role model and be a mouthpiece, or even just an ear who's going to listen to someone who doesn't have the father figure that I've had, why wouldn't I?
Amen.
Great space to leave it.
Minister, thank you very much for that. That's been a pleasure, Christian. Dom, Jello, we out.